Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hair Metal Rules podcast. Today, I have a guy on the show that I have been listening to for over 30 years. He's been in bands like Mary Hoax, Cats and Boots, and one of my favorite bands of all time was Heavy Bones. Today on the show, we have none other than Joel Ellis, the lead singer of all three of those bands. Thank you for coming on the show, sir.
No, yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I love, like I say, I love, the first time I ever saw Shotgun Sally on Headbanger's Ball, I was such a fan. Your voice, you got the scream in your voice, and Cats and Boots was such a high energy band, and I was, just floored by, I guess they categorized you as glam rock, sleaze rock, back in the day. How did you get started in the music to begin with?
It was kind of inevitable growing up in Cleveland, Ohio in the 70s or 60s and 70s. Um, so I mean, I came from a musical family, all the way back. My grandfather and grandmother and my mother said they were opera singers over in Europe. And then, I just growing up in a family where we always had a great stereo in the front room, and my sisters were like 10 years older than me. I was an accident, or I like to call it a blessing.
Right.
But so I was always getting the I remember when they were doing that's funny because I just did an interview that asked the same question, so might be a little redundant, but I'll get through this. But yeah, I remember when my sisters, I was a little kid, I was a latchkey kid, and they had to drag me everywhere. So I was getting dragged, I got dragged through the 60s, from the Beatles releasing new singles, to the dawn of the Rolling Stones. And then I kind of grew up with those bands, especially the Stones, you know what I mean? And then these great bands started popping up, just like Zeppelin and Aerosmith, and Cleveland was a hotbed. I mean, Cleveland, there's absolutely indisputable reasons for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to be here because it's kind of hard to explain, but it was just pure insanity. The minute that WMMS 101 FM, number one FM rock radio station in the country at the time, and then on, just a great station. The DJs broke new bands, and they worked a lot with the Cleveland Agora, and which, by the way, is where rock and roll got its name. I was at 5,000 Euclid Ave, and there were concert halls down there, the Agora, the Cleveland Agora, and any 2 or 3, 4 days out of the week, there was, you'd see Bruce Springsteen one day, Rush another day. You just never knew. There had so many concerts that they had to have them in the morning and afternoon, call them coffee break concerts, because it just couldn't do enough concerts in Cleveland, and every show was sold out within minutes. So but growing up, Cleveland was also kind of a rough town. It was a pretty rough town. And being a young guy, when I was old enough to hit the streets, it was not a warm, fuzzy town. So you had to be tough to grow up here. And, unfortunately, well, let's say on the positive side of that, let's just say, we started going to concerts at a young age. And, we just, even though concert tickets were like $6-8, we still snuck into every concert.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, $6-8 was a 12-pack for us, so we'd rather just get a 12-pack and sneak in. But that's what we did. A group of rough guys that I grew up with. We were a bunch of very enterprising punks. And so every concert we'd go, we'd figure out the lay of the building and bust through fire exits, climb walls, kick out windows.
Wow.
But being that Cleveland was pretty rough, the closer I got to graduation, a lot of my friends never lived long enough to see drinking age, even though they started drinking when they were 15 years old, 14.
Right.
And, as you know, in the 70s it was a time when we could outrun and outsmart the cops, and so we did, I mean, it was pretty rough, but, as my friends started dropping like flies, I got into music, and they went down the rabbit hole. Music saved my ass. literally. I was just so engulfed with music at the time anyways, and rightly so, man. It's like Joe Walsh is from my hometown. Rush would come over the pond and play our high school. And I mean, we were really in the thick of it. We were steeped in it. In fact, if you watch Rush's documentary about the story of Rush, you'll see where they actually say it was the listeners, Cleveland listeners, radio, the fans of Cleveland that actually got Working Man played on the radio station for the first time. And we did. I mean, back in those days, you could sit around, with a case of beer and your buddies and pass around the doobies, and crack open, shoot beers, and then we'd sit there and dial the radio station, and the DJs would answer, and we'd say, "Gotta play this song." And so we just badgered them to death until they played Working Man. And so that's the environment I grew up in. And music was good to me. I chiseled away my vocals, because I got kicked out of a couple bands for being a really bad guitar player. So I figured I got to do something if I want to be in a band. And so I just started playing the nightclubs around Cleveland, and then I took it out to Hollywood. And my band that I was in high school followed me to Hollywood. And a couple months after we got there, we were passing out our tape with demos. And we had people like Dweezil Zappa called me, invited me up to the house, and I became close with Dweezil. And Frank actually got me my first record deal, Cats and Boots, on EMI. And we were hanging out with all of them. At Hollywood, we were in the soup of it all, and we signed to Atlantic Records like 2 months after we landed in Hollywood, and just the rest of it was just stepping stones.
My whole podcast, I love 80s, and I call it hair metal. And if that offends people, so be it. But for the sake of my podcast, I call it hair metal because that the 80s, there was that whole Sunset Strip. Everyone was grouped into you were glam, you were sleaze, you were hair metal, you were hard. Everybody was kind of grouped into everything. And I have always loved this music. I started listening to it around 85, when I heard Cinderella's Night Songs. That got me hooked on, hair metal. And I was always one that would read magazines from cover to cover. I read Metal Edge, every word of it. I read Rip, Circus, Hit Parade, every word of it, because that was the only way to know anything about anybody. And I remember the first time I ever saw Cats and Boots, like I say, was on the Headbangers Ball. But I also saw when your album was getting ready to be released, there was an ad in Rip or Metal Edge One, showing you guys. And I just thought the music was, I mean, how can you not like Shotgun Sally? How can you not like Her Monkey? I mean, how did you get in with the Japanese players that were in Cats and Boots?
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, we were on Atlantic Records, and 1986 was a real wild year in Hollywood. So, I mean, it was just about at its hedonistic point, and that included the record executives, and the managers, and every artist possible. I never really, I was really dialed in to succeed. And so the guys in my band, the managers were doing drugs, and the A&R guys at Atlantic were Kenny Austin, who's a wonderful guy, but there was more cocaine in his office than contract. And when my guitarist, when they started getting into heroin, I got out. And so I just started at that point in time. I was doing a lot of stuff. I was doing a lot of things musically and hanging out like a lot with Dweezil. And through Dweezil, I met just so many different people. Being in the Strip, the guys in Rat and Motley Crue and Dokken and Great White, Jack Russell. Jack Russell was a dear friend of mine until the day he passed. But and so during that time, it was a culmination of me really being in kind of like that Hollywood musician soup. And so from the time that I was still doing shows in Hollywood with Mary Hoax, we were on Atlantic. We were doing shows at Gazzari's and the Roxy and the Whiskey and the Country Club up in the Valley, and we were playing all the rock clubs, the Troubadour, doing a lot of shows, bands like London and just really like the hardcore Hollywood scene. And that's when Ohashi was there in LA. So he was in a band called Seiki Matu, Seiki Matu is kind of like the second coming of the devil. And they wear, it's a satirical comedy type band, but they were like the Japanese Kiss. They wore kabuki makeup and they were huge, so he was a guitarist in that band, and he had a hard time getting along with the guys. So he split. He wasn't happy. He came, and everybody in Hollywood, he came over to Hollywood and he started following me around with a tape recorder, taping my shows. And he decided out of all the singers in Hollywood that I was the guy that he wanted in his band. And so he approached me and asked, and I said, well, let's culminate this together and see what happens. And I got into a rehearsal room with him, and I noticed all he had was an old Marshall stack and a Les Paul. And I said, well, this is refreshing, man, because this is what I grew up with.
Right.
And just the tones were so different. You got to kind of put your mindset back, back to those days where everybody was playing Charvels and right. That they all wanted to be Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen, but it just kind of got kind of stagnant. And for me, growing up in the 70s, where all the great 70s artists, they attributed their style to their influences or blending influences, a very intelligent approach to music, whereas in the 80s it wasn't really so much about paying homage or being unique or innovating off of your influence. It was more about what's happening, what's selling on the scene. Yeah. And to me, coming from Cleveland, where any day of the week you could be seeing the Stones or Pink Floyd or Bruce Springsteen or Jethro Tull or Yes or any of those bands. You know what I mean? Not to mention even like local bands. There was a big, great local scene here, and so. I kind of feel like I kind of felt pretty unhappy. I did for a while after Mary Hoax. I joined Rough Cut when Paul Shortino left, and I really enjoyed Rough Cut because they had a real intelligent sense about their music. They were unique. They didn't sound like other bands, and outside of the pioneers of '80s rock. I mean, of course. Van Halen, they come out of the 70s. Basically, I think of Van Halen as a tail end of the 70s. And after so I had rehearsed with Ohashi and met him, and I hadn't really made a decision, but I was in Rough Cut at the time, and the offer was there on the table for him. He's like, let's come to Japan. Let's just come with me to Japan. And I looked at it as like, well, this is great. This is something that I can really melt minds with this guy who plays just a straight Les Paul, very Jimmy Page style. And but he was also influenced by the Sex Pistols and things like this. So there were elements that were outside of the Hollywood scene, and I really enjoyed that. Because the type of music that he brought, even though he would deny it, I hate Jimmy Page, I said, no, well, you sound a lot like him, or Joe Perry, but he brought an element of punk rock. He brought an element of, I don't want to say rockabilly, but it was just kind of a, I don't know, like a cutting edge kind of version of, Memphis style in his playing. And, you notice it's a little bit bouncy,
Right. Yes.
Yeah. But he also, some of his tones just really rang like Zeppelin. And I always thought that. He denied it, but Ricky DeLana, who was an engineer for Zeppelin, came to see us at the Palace Theater, and he was like, Joel, he goes, your band is like the closest that I've ever heard a band sound like Zeppelin live. You guys really have it down. So in the beginning, when I met Jim, I was still in Rough Cut, and then We were opening for Ronnie James Dio at the Pacific Amphitheater, and I literally broke my leg on stage. I blamed Frankie Banali for it because he was like, break a leg, because it was my first concert in front of,
Right. And you
thousands.
literally broke your leg instead
I
of good
literally
luck.
broke my leg August 1st, 1987.
Wow.
And so Frankie called me Hoppy from then on in. And so then, Frankie and I had a great friendship. And that's how he ended up in my band, Heavy Bones,
Right.
later, Warner Brothers. I've always wanted to play with them. Plus, his influences went back to Bonham. And he was just a unique player, just really had his own style and beat the drums like they owed him money, is what he used to say.
Right. Yeah.
So after I broke my leg on stage, David Alford was a little upset with me because I ripped my leg in half during the beginning of the set. And there we were in front of 30,000 people. And I was like, I can't do this. After a couple of songs, I was passing out from the pain because
Yeah.
literally my leg spun around and my heel got caught on something. And a cable harness. There were like 15 bands playing that day. And so I don't know what happened. I spun around and my foot got stuck and the rest of my body kept going and it just literally ripped. My kneecap was over here. My femur was sticking there. My ACLs were in a ball. And so I sang as long as I could. And, I was so excited. I think I spun around with so much force because Ronnie James Dio, he overheard me telling Jack Russell that I was nervous because of a big audience. And he came over and he said, did I hear you right? And he said, I'm going to give you the full Ronnie mix. And he did. He called the board and he said, light him up, give him the exact same settings and everything I use when I sing. And then he came back and he said, in fact, why don't you use my microphone? And he pulled out his custom gold-plated microphone and gave it to me to sing through.
Wow.
And when I opened my mouth on stage, it literally sounded like rocket engines. Just that's what hit my mind was like, because I was also an aerospace engineer, so I know what rocket engines.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. My first job out of college was doing destructive testing on ramjet engines and missile rockets, and it was a pretty cool job, So I went straight from there into rock and roll, which there was really no gap between the two. And but yeah, that sound, I'll never forget it. I had always sang through a shitty mic and a couple of little monitors on stage and a club PA, but when I opened my mouth and sang through Ronnie's system, Jesus, wow, man, I spun so fast and I wasn't looking where I was standing or anything.
Yeah.
I ripped my leg in half. And so I remember laying in the hospital while my leg was recovering, which I never really did. I broke it like 20 or 30 times on stage in Japan after that. And Sam Kinison fell against it. We were going to a party after the Rainbow over at Chris Squire's house up in the Hollywood Hills, Chris Squire from Yes. And we had to drag Sam out of the back of the limo. And so my buddy Tony Roman and I were dragging Sam up to Chris's steps. Sam he was at his peak for weight. And then he just rolled into my leg and the knee normally bends like this. Well, it went like that.
Oh, wow.
So I just kept popping it back in stage whenever it popped out and the whole tour with Cats and Boots. In fact, I just recently had a knee replacement after all these years. But it was after that, after the Rough Cut incident, that I decided, I just want to get out of Hollywood. Let's go to Japan, sake, sushi, and Japanese girls. Let's go.
There you go. Yeah.
And never expected that record to do anything, but 50,000 copies a month through a magazine order in Japan, went #1, landed a big deal on EMI. Then we hit it with, #1, top 3 album of the year, Japan, top 10 in the UK, went gold in the US, and just a lot of radio airplay. Her Monkey was most requested song on KNEC for, I think, 8 weeks. And
wow.
And it just, I was locked into it. I really didn't like the song Shotgun Sally, but we were just
Shotgun Sally. Yeah, like I said, there's so many great songs on there. But I mean, like I say, when you first hear the guitar riff and the drums start on that song. I mean, I'm telling you that Shotgun Sally is an awesome song. I know you probably don't like it. You probably sung it to death, but I'm telling you
Well,
that song is that
yeah,
song it rules.
I'll rephrase it. It's not that I don't like the song. I mean, obviously, I like it. We had fun with it, but
Sure.
it's one of those songs like Nirvana's Teen Spirit, or
Right.
or any one of those songs that were meant to be, I'm a loser, baby. These songs were accidents. We were
Yeah.
goofing around, and it's because I think it's got something to do with the jovialness of it that you're putting into a song. You're
Right.
not taking it too seriously. Well, at the time I did. I had a crazy, I had a crazy girlfriend that she
I
she
got you.
she swore she was going to blow my head off because if I can't have you, nobody will. And
Wow.
I believed it
There's your
because
Shotgun Sally, right?
yeah, and I believed it because Randy, the drummer in Cats and Boots, had been he still got 5 bullets in his body from a girl who
Wow.
said the exact same words. If I can't live with you, no one is. And she shot him 5 times in the gut. And
Gracious.
he can't go through an MRI or a CT scan because he's still got too many bullets in him. But
Well,
he's
Randy followed you from Mary Hoax to Cats in Boots, so he followed you to Japan as well.
Yeah, Randy came to Hollywood out of Black Oak, Arkansas. So he
Black
was,
Oak, Arkansas.
yeah, and he was every bit from Houston. We went to Japan, and we were learning Japanese on the flight on the way over there. And he's like, by the time we got to Narita Airport, Tokyo, he's like, I got it. Konnichiwa. And I'm like, what are you talking?
Wow.
And so, yeah, I learned the language. A lot of it, I learned the language pretty quickly, but Randy was so funny. We'd play tricks on him all the time. He's like, I need to get some toothpaste. And we'd be like in the drugstore, and I'd get a tube of wasabi. And I'd ask Butch, I go, this toothpaste? He's like, no, 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 don't, no, no. This is most powerful. And I said, what is it? It's wasabi. And I'm like, oh, Randy, this is some good toothpaste.
Wow.
But yeah, we thought we were gonna have to resuscitate him that day.
So after Cats in Boots, I know Heavy Bones came on towards like the end of the whole 80s sunset hair metal craze. But I tell you, I bought Heavy Bones, and because I always liked Gary Hoey, and of course I liked you, and you got Frankie Banali in there too. That's a great album. I have posted clips of you guys on my Instagram page many times, and a
Thank
lot of
you.
people don't even know who Heavy Bones is. But I
Yeah, we were
mean,
together pre-production. We wrote like probably 100 songs, and we were in pre-production for 8 months before we started making the record. And then we went out on tour, found out that our manager scoffed off with all of our money, and there was no tour support. And then the band just dissolved, and probably just as fast. But I will say one thing for Heavy Bones is that we had 2 songs that were semi-released. 4 a.m. was released to radio, and Pirate Radio in Los Angeles was they played it. And again, ironically, it was the most requested song for 8 weeks, just like Her Monkey. It's the magic number 8. And when yeah, so it's been 8 weeks, and also on KNAC. I mean, Her Monkey got a lot of traction. The video, when it hit MTV, it went into the top 10 rotation there, at Headbangers Ball. And then our next song, Turn It On, Turn It On got picked up by a Coca-Cola promotion for the Summer Olympics. And Warner Brothers had a promotional cassette tape that had a bunch of new artists on it. And they decided to put our song at track 1 on side 1 of the cassette tape. And it was a free giveaway tape that got shrink wrapped into every 6-pack that got sold around the world for the Summer Olympics promotion.
oh, wow.
So even though it wasn't released and pushed as a single, it's still 93 million plus copies went. And so yeah, so those were the 2 songs
Yeah,
off the
yeah.
record that got some attention. They got
I know I wrote two songs down on my page that I really like. I really love the song Dead End Street. I love that song. Turn It On. Anna is a great song.
yeah, Anna's a special one.
Just so many great songs, and you know, people know about it, people don't know about it. My Instagram page, my podcast, I just love to. I was always drawn to the not the Motley Crues and the Rats and the Dockers. I was drawn to the Cats in Boots, the Heaven's Edge, the Lillian Axe, the bands that weren't super huge, but you know what? Their music was just as good, if not better.
And Kicks and
And
Toy Rocks and yeah.
yeah, but you know, you didn't get. I've talked to so many people, Mr. Ellis, that you know, we got a record deal, and it's like you just said a minute ago. Heavy Bones was there, and it was gone just as fast as it was there. And there were so many bands like that back then that a lot of them got signed to, you know, indie labels, and you know, they're like the holy grails that you look up on eBay, and their vinyl is five, six, $700. You know, Cats in Boots is not a cheap album to find on eBay to purchase.
It's
Heavy
being
Bones is,
reissued.
huh?
I'm reissuing it.
Oh, you are great.
Yeah, the masters reverted back to me, and I'm talking to Garth Richardson, the original engineer, about doing a complete remix of that record off of the original masters. And so, yep, it'll be a
Well, hopefully I can get it. I say I'm the type that I don't care if it's been remastered. I don't have to have an original copy with blah 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 serial number on the back. This is where, you know, I don't have to have, I love just having it. You see my wall is just full of albums that I have collected, and there's so many more that I want to get. But reissues are great with me. It's still the same music. It doesn't matter, you know, if it's an original or not. So after Heavy Bones, you did some solo stuff after Heavy Bones?
yeah, I mean, I've never stopped recording and writing, and I mean, I'm more of an artist. As a my influences, like I said, again, I was a kid in the 70s, and so I'm an artist who is, expresses their influences, and I'm always pushing myself. And so I mean, after Heavy Bones, during Heavy Bones, I was spending a lot of time with Bobby Womack. And I don't know if you know Bobby Womack, but he's a patron saint of music, coming out of Sam Cooke's band in the late 50s, early. And then being out on the Chitlin Circuit bus, he had Jimi Hendrix was playing, guitar for Little Richard, and he was playing a right-handed guitar, and he's left-handed,
Right.
and so he was constantly, and it drove Bobby crazy. And on the bus, you heard the pick in the strings. He said, I never got any sleep. So he taught Jimi Hendrix how to flip the guitar over and play right-handed, and the rest is history. But Bobby's life is just a cascaded series of things like that. And Bobby and I are both from Cleveland. He's a lot older than me. He passed on, rest his soul, but he was very close to me during that period of time. And towards the end of Heavy Bones, and then Bobby was also, he wrote It's All Over Now for the Rolling Stones, and that broke them in the States. And so they've always been very close. And so Bobby pulled me in and introduced me to Keith Richards and those guys, and they embraced me. And so it was during them making the Voodoo Lounge record, and and me helping Bobby with the Resurrection record, and then their influence on me with the Ellis Island record. And the Ellis Island record is a very, very special thing. We went into, when they reopened the little basement apartment studio in the basement of the apartment building at Highland and Sunset, where Jimi Hendrix lived as a teenager before Electric Ladyland was being built. And so they reopened it back in the 70s. When Jimmy left, Frank Zappa went in and made Hot Rats there. And Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison would read poetry in there, everything. So the room had this amazing vibe. And honestly, it really did. It was thick with spirits, man. And we didn't have any songs written, but Michael Mom bought the room, and he said, you know, at the Rainbow one night, he's like, "Hey, Joel, you want to come in and test out the room?" You know, and I'm like, "Oh, yes." Yeah. So I just grabbed a bunch of guys. I had Phil Chen on bass. He played on Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow and Rod Stewart's band. And then we had Larry Aberman on drums, who played with the Vaughn brothers and Double Trouble, and Ohashi on guitar from Cats and Boots. And I brought in a dear friend of mine, Jimmy Zolo, and amazing blues guitarist. And I just had all these cats, you know, Spider Middleman from the Goddamn Liars on baritone sax, and we loaded that with delay. And, you know, George Shelby, who played with Anita Baker and Sting, you know, just eclectic. Barry Saunders, engineer from the Moody Blues. And we didn't have any songs written, and Bobby Womack was chiming in, and, you know, it was a big influence. You know, I was like, you know, talking ideas with, you know, with Phil and Keith Richards and Bobby Womack and all these cats. And we were, yeah, so we just rehearsed one night, and then the next day we went in and we were locked ourselves in there for a week, and we came out with 7 songs, and it was all stream of consciousness, and it's an incredible record. And one song just came down. I can't take credit for writing it, but it's a song called Lily. And, you know, it's just got Jimmy's 59 Strat. And anybody who knows what I'm talking about, Jimmy Zola he was playing a 59 Strat, just kind of tuning it with a Tweed amp in Jimi Hendrix's old studio. The 59 Strat is a legendary spooky guitar. And Stevie Ray Vaughan played One Buddy Holly and so on and so forth. You get the picture. But those guitars there's something about a 59 Strat. And then these lyrics just hit me. My girlfriend at the time was really into deep poetry when she wasn't dancing at the Crazy Girls. But you know, it just hit me. And so this song, Lily, it's about the angel of death who takes the waiting souls of children to heaven. And there's an artist in Russia, Yuldis Bakhchiozina. She's a very good friend of mine. And she invited me to do a collaboration with it. She said when she was studying shamanism in Nepal, they said her celestial name was Lily. And so, you know, she's never really told anybody that before, but the song struck it with her. And she's amazing, Vogue fashion photographer. Her artwork is in museums. She makes films. I mean, she's enormous, and she's so talented. And so our idea is to, well, maybe it was her idea. It's a collaboration. We call it the Collaboration for Peace around that song Lily that's off that Ellis Island session that took place. And so what we want to do is she wants to produce a short film / video and then make it a museum piece. And it's going to be a statement of a peace through the power of art between a Russian artist and an American artist, rock artist and fine art, fashion, you know, artist. And so we want to show the world how peace can exist through the power of art. And we also want to bring attention to child victims of violence and abuse.
Right.
So, you know, if you look back on the time that, you know, we made the record till now, you really have to trust in the timing of your life and believe that, you know, there is a grand plan for things, because I can't, you know, if I'd have released the record any sooner, you know, I've kept the masters, you know, just stuck away. I did it at A&M Studios, and the mix and mastering, they offered me a deal, and then, you know, things just happened and I never released it. And that record has seasoned its purpose in life to take place with Yuldis's collaboration. And that song is now going to be introduced to the world on a much grander scale with a lot deeper purpose. So, and then after that, I also did some recording. My son Joey, he was just a brilliant artist and prodigy. And so I took him in for his first studio recording, and we worked with some great people, you know, Don Peake, who, you know, played with Ray Charles, and he was guitarist, and, you know, guys from Bonnie Raitt's band, and Mark, the sax player from the Eagles, and just a bunch of different guys. Dave Jenkins engineered the session. So we did a cool record. It had kind of a country Western vibe to it. KJ97 pulled up our version of Guitar Man, and they said, we got to put this in rotation. This is brilliant. Mitch Perry played lead guitar with Joey on it, and the two were doing a guitar battle at the end. It's just a really cool record. That's the Ellis and Angel record.
Okay.
And outside of that, I probably have about maybe 500 songs in the can.
Nice.
Too many to ever record on one record.
Well, just hearing you talk, about the record you're talking about, the record you made after Cats in Boots, with all those great musicians, it just tells me that, you went into rock and roll and hard rock, but you came back to what you grew up listening to. I think, a lot of people I talked to, well, yeah, I did the 80s thing. I did the heavy metal, but I came back. I know I was talking to Mark Diglio, the guitarist from XYZ, and he played in the XYZ, and then I don't want to do it anymore. And he played blues for years and years because that was what his passion was. And you going back and doing this record, and even the song Lily, look what a song turned into that was only a song to begin with. And look what it turned into. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, you going in this room with all these people was the point in your life when it was what you were supposed to do. And it sounds
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it was such an inspiration to you. And it probably it's probably one of the records that probably means more to you than probably anything else you've done, because you went back to your roots. And I see your roots are, yes, the Stones, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, I just think it's so cool that you were a kid.
Early Bruce.
Early Bruce, right?
The
Not
Asbury
later
Park
Bruce,
Bruce.
right? But I just think it was so cool that you were a kid, and these concerts were so close to you that you climbed fences, you went through fire doors, and I didn't grow up in that
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
mean, back
you
in the
know.
day, we snuck in. The whole thing was to sneak in, and then by the end of the concert, you better be up against the stage, or your friends are going to beat you down. And
Right.
I saw Queen in 1978, and we would all reach out and grab Freddie's foot every time he came over, and he would
Wow.
play games with us with his feet. And Bob Seger, he was like right there, just commanding the audience and the stage, and just so many great bands, and
Right.
you got to see them right there,
Sure.
you know.
Well, are you excited about going to Rockin' Pod this year?
Yeah, it's my first what do you call it, like fanzine meet and greet type event. And
Right.
yeah, my assistant Joe DeLucas is a great guy out of Nashville, but he's moving and shaking, because for me it's like if you're gonna wait for me to promote myself, and you're gonna wait a long time, so listen to the old records. But I've got people in my camp now who are saying, you're really great, and we're
Yes.
gonna push you out there again. And I heard it from a lot of people. Stephen Piercy, my old roommate, one of my best friends, he's like, "Come on, man, get out of here." He goes, "Because that's what we do, fucker." And
That's right. Yeah.
and Jack Russell had a long talk with me. He's like, you're not just doing yourself a huge injustice, because you've got such a gift. Even forget about your voice, which is amazing, but just your personality on stage.
Sure.
All you need to do is get on stage and hold a microphone, and you've got the crowd. And he used to say, you're not just doing yourself an injustice, but you're doing the world an injustice. And those things just started sinking into my head, over the last couple of years. And then Warner Brothers called me, and they said the Heavy Bones record hasn't even grown legs. We really think that it's got so much further to go. And David Arquette's a friend of mine, and he said, yeah, some of these songs could easily make soundtracks.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm back. I'm actually making. I've got hundreds of. I don't know if you see this stack of videos behind me.
Right. Yeah.
These are just some of the videos that I've got that I shot in Hollywood during the 80s. I mean, I've got tubs of VHS, hundreds of hours, and I've got stacks of all kind of video footage that I shot. Some really cool footage, being backstage at the Roxy, and I'm, Bret Michaels and I are hanging out with, Rudy Sarzo and Steve Lukather, and I'm on stage singing with Steve Lukather, and Randy Jackson from American Idol was our had his hair moosed up, and he was playing bass, and it was just a great time in the 80s. And I happened to get a lot of it on video. And so the first thing I'm doing right now is I have like 6 hours of video footage that takes place in 48 hours. Everything from that Hollywood scene to the Capitol Records building where we held our mock cattle call and we invited all the Playboy centerfolds down to audition. We hijacked a room at Capitol Records, and then we arrive at the film hangar where they actually brought in stagehands, the regular film stagehands, and these guys built us a custom stage for her monkey.
Right.
And it just shows, and I interview everybody, and we have fun with the camera, but it takes place in 48 hours. And then I've got the downtown Julia Brown MTV and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna edit it all together. And
I would love to watch.
it's
I would
fun
love to
stuff.
watch that.
Yeah, I'm going back and reliving this stuff, and I'm just going, holy shit, man, what a great time. But that's the first one. I'm gonna do the making of her monkey, 48 hours in Hollywood, and it'll blow your mind. Just what it wasn't even 48 hours. It was a little more than 24 hours, and we were done breaking down.
Nice.
It pretty much really was about 24 hours now that I think about it, because we were at the Roxy the night before. That morning we were at Capitol. That afternoon we hit the sound stage, and then we shot the video all day, and then we broke down at night, and that was it. So it's in a 24-hour period of time, there's 6 hours of footage that's just classic. So that's going to be my first experiment, learning how to edit video, and I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and then
yes,
move on to the documentary.
Please do. I would like I said, I would love to. I love digging through YouTube and finding, stuff that people videotape from the Roxy and the Whiskey back in the day. Some of the lesser known bands that were, you had 5 bands on a card, and the first 2 bands, they really weren't that big, but bands like that. But Rockin' Pod, me and my wife went to Rockin' Pod a couple of years ago. You will enjoy that. I met so many people from that era that like I said, I have been my heroes for 30 years. I met Ron Keel, Mark Ferrari.
Ron's a good buddy.
Yeah, Anthony Quarter from Tora Tora, Steve Rochelle from Tough, Tony Harnell was there. I mean, and I'm like a kid in a candy store. I walk in there and I'm bashful. I'm like, I don't want to. But me and my wife are gonna try to go to
I hope to
this
meet you
year,
there.
and I'll come up to you and introduce myself. But sir, I've been a fan for a long time. You have some great music. Like I said, I love Cats in Boots. I was listening to Cats in Boots earlier today. I listened to some Heavy Bones. You're you're a different person than I thought you would be. Because anything I've ever read about you over the years, you're a real personable person. Just you don't know what you read everything on the internet. You don't know, but you're such a great guy. You have lived lots of great music coming up, as a boy and a teenager, and you live the Sunset Strip life, and you're back home to your roots, and you're making some great stuff from videotapes that I can't wait to see on a YouTube channel. And I never when the publicist, the lady I talked to, said you would do the interview, I was like, Christina, yes. I told my wife, I said,
she's a new publicist for me. She's great. She's doing hello, Christina. Thank you for this interview.
She's so nice. She's been back and forth with me and all, but I told my wife, I was like, I actually got the lead singer of Cats in Boots and Heavy Bones. She's like, well, I have no idea who that is. I said, doesn't matter. You don't know who they are. I said, he's actually going to do the podcast. My podcast is not some big production. My podcast is more like you're talking to an old fan. It's really not an interview. I just love to hear people's stories, anything they'll tell.
That's what it's about, man. Yeah.
And it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I hope you get your videos done good. I hope to see you at Rockin' Pod in a few weeks, and shake your hand and get you to sign something for me. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Geez, man, you know what? If your podcast ever goes down, you'd make a great psychologist, you know. Do you take health insurance?
Do I do what now? I'm a great psychiatrist, really?
Yeah, no, yeah, you're like you're great for the you're making my head is growing. Like, oh, this guy. Yeah.
No,
No,
seriously. Like I said,
you're very flattering. I appreciate
I
that.
have always, like I
But
say,
your perception of music and artists is very keen and is very insightful. So I hope that your podcast reaches a whole lot of people. I'll do my best to push it out there for you too, Jeremy.
I appreciate it. And I'll let you get back to your video editing. The missus will be home before too long, and I got to go cook some supper because I sat at home today and she worked. So I'll go have her something to eat when she gets up. But thank you so much. Be careful going to Rockin' Pod, and good luck with your videos. And God bless you, sir. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, God bless you too, Jeremy. Be safe.
All right, take it easy. Hope to see you soon.
All right, love.
Bye, sir.
Bye.